Hey there,
Okay.
entrepreneurs. My name is Sushant, and welcome to Trep Talks. This is the show where I interview successful e commerce entrepreneurs, business executives, and thought leaders and ask them questions about their business story and also dive deep into some of the strategies and tactics that they have used to start and grow their businesses. And today I'm really excited to welcome Tanya Heath to the show. Tanya is the founder of footwear and accessories brand called Tanya Heath Paris. Tanya Heath creates innovative footwear and accessories that allow women to navigate their busy days and climb the corporate ladder without having to sacrifice comfort for allure. And today I'm going to ask Tanya a few questions about her entrepreneurial journey and some of the strategies and tactics that she has used to start and grow her business. So thank you so much for joining me today at Trip Talks, Tanya.
Thanks very much for being interested in the story.
Yeah. So can you share a little bit before we get into it, what is your business and what is the primary problem you're solving?
So the primary problem was really very related to myself. So before starting this company, in Canada, I worked for Foreign Affairs. When I came to France, I did an MBA. So I started working as a management consultant. Because my French was poor at the time, I was often traveling. So virtually everywhere, a lot of travel to the Middle East, a lot of travel to Northern Europe. And at that time, being a management consultant meant you definitely had a corporate look. So the first thing I noticed is when we were going to the client site, I'd be the only person on the team actually checking in my luggage.
Mm,
And all of the men on my team they'd be there with a carry-on. And part of the reason is I had a lot of shoes. So that was the first thing I was thinking. The second thing I was thinking is I actually kept up that lifestyle and that career for all three of my pregnancies. So I
mm,
was wearing not just pregnancy office wear, but pretty high heels throughout three pregnancies, and I shouldn't have. So I ended up more or less damaging my foot by wearing the high heels when I shouldn't have been wearing high heels. And my
mm,
doctor told me I had to stop wearing heels. And I started thinking, well, yes, I could wear flats, but I would feel diminished as a human being. I'm
mm,
very passionate about high heels and I'm passionate about fashion. So I started thinking, there's technology and innovation in so many aspects of our lives. Why can't we see if the principles used in other businesses, especially around disruptive innovation, can be applied to fashion? And can I re-engineer a high heel that will be women friendly, that will be safe, that will be comfortable, that will be easy to use, and that will solve the problems of pain, the problems of traveling. And I think one of the biggest surprises to me is we actually, before virtually anybody was talking about it, became a very sustainable company. Because with one pair of shoes and a few pairs of heels, you can do a lot more and go a lot further than you can with five or six pairs of shoes. So you're actually reducing the number of things
mm,
that you're buying, wearing what you have much more often. And it's kind of a brand which has something for the minimalist because you're using so much less, but it also has something for the maximalist because we have 500 different heel styles and you can
mm.
go wild on heels. I hope that
So,
wasn't too much of an earful.
no, that was great. I'm curious, maybe a little bit, if you can share for women, like what does the heel represent? Like I know even the heels are there's different kinds of heels, right? There's like one is pointy heel, one is more of a flat heel. Is it really just about fashion and um, I guess an expression of what you're feeling in the moment, or if you're going out, you want to look a certain way, or is it does it mean something other? Like what are women getting out of like wearing heels? I don't know if that's
Okay, so I'm
that's
sorry.
more of
So
a
you'll
that's
have
more
to
of a curiosity for me.
no, so you'll have to cut me off if my answer is boring to you. But in
Okay.
actual fact, heels historically came to Europe through Iran, and they were originally worn by men. So they were a device to keep your foot in a saddle, especially in battle. So that's one sort of touch point on the heel. Another touch point on the heel is Turkish baths. So those shoes were imported during, I guess, the point where Italy was interacting a lot with Turkey. So Italian noblewomen started wearing something called a chopine. And the chopine were very high wooden, they were almost platform shoes, but they were too difficult to walk in. So in actual fact, at that point, the only people who were wearing high heels were aristocrats and prostitutes. And the fact that that was the population wearing the heels gave heels a certain connotation. So heels, until very recently, had a connotation of being frivolous or for wealthy women. Then you fast forward to the suffragette women movement, where women are looking for equality with men. What happened at that time is men would say things like, how could you possibly give the vote to women? They're so frivolous, they wear uncomfortable footwear. So suffragettes actually started wearing flats. And that what you see, I'd say up until the 80s or the 90s, is a strong correlation between women's place in society. So, for example, after the Second World War, when women became more feminine, they left the workforce and started working at home, raising their families, high heels became higher. And in fact, that's in parallel with a technical evolution. So at that time, you were able to do injection molding on heels. So you could start putting metal bars so that the heels wouldn't collapse if they reached a certain height. And this kind of broke in the 80s when you saw that first generation of women going to the office and becoming lawyers, starting to work in funds, starting to work for consulting firms in professional services. So it was that sort of bonfire of the vanities era. And today, I would say heels are less political than they were before. And what does the heel represent to a woman? Because I think that was the second part of your question. We did a lot of psychological testing. There's a lot of women who don't like heels. They find them uncomfortable, and they won't touch them. However, when we did the psychological testing, what we asked women to do was interact with a group while wearing flats and while wearing heels. And across the board, what was fascinating is the group took the woman in heels more seriously, but the woman who was wearing heels also took herself more seriously. So for some women, I would say today, heels make them feel strong, powerful, in control, professional, and also beautiful, sexy, seductive. So I'd say the modern woman who does wear heels has a whole bunch of values that she associates with them. And the woman who doesn't wear heels doesn't know what she's missing, because there are, other ways of consuming heels today.
Definitely. I mean, that's a very fascinating history of heels. I didn't think you would go in that, but definitely you've thought about the heels and you've read the history of heels. So it's very, very interesting. How long ago did you start your business? And I know we were talking a little bit before, you said that you really started in the retail space, brick and mortar stores. Can you share a little bit about, what did it take for you to get the business started? How did you know that, given that you wanted a product like this for yourself, for your own needs, that there would be a market for this more on a broader scale? Did you do some sort of like a market research or?
No, I didn't, because in a past life, I used to teach disruptive innovation at one of France's best engineering schools. So I taught technical disruptive innovation in a business-to-business concept. A business-to-business environment. Sometimes my English is a bit weak. And I knew enough from my disruptive innovation theory work that there's very little point testing a disruptive innovative idea. So I was going mostly on intuition and my own personal feeling. And in fact, the company doesn't do, as I'd say traditionally, we didn't do too much market testing. I'd like to do more now.
Okay. And so you had this intuition. Can you share a little bit about, how did you get did you have a prototype? How did you get it manufactured in the initially? And did you basically just start a store, or did you put your products in like other retail stores and see if if people are going to
No,
buy
so
them?
that was a very long process. I started by doing what I was able to do at the time. So I started by trying to buy a patent and trying to buy a factory because I do have a private equity background. So that's something that I could do. But the patent that I tried to buy turned out to test very poorly. So I didn't pursue that. And I'm really lucky I didn't buy the factory because they were specialized in army boots for the French army. And I didn't know then, but I do know now that that factory would have never been able to to manufacture a high heel. So I then set about hiring engineers and shoe designers. So to finance it, I sold my apartment in Paris. So that gave me my first €1,000,000. And I was able to pay a team of 14 engineers and designers for 3 years. All in all, we came up with 6 different prototypes. And finally, we got it right, but it took us another 1.5 years to make that initial prototype look like a luxury shoe.
That's very interesting. So you basically went all in. I mean, these days, if you think about, when people talk about starting businesses and the whole agile methodology, it's almost like, you want to start really, really small, even trying to test the market before, you even have like a product in hand. If you were to if you were to start the same business or start a new business from scratch, something like this, would you do things a little bit differently?
I would do it completely. So let's be very clear. If I was to redo this business, I quite simply wouldn't. What I do is probably more difficult than, like, this makes everything I've done in my life before look like it was a cakewalk. And I guarantee you, I had the kind of big deal jobs that people brag about. This is so incredibly difficult in every single aspect, from manufacturing, from the fashion aspects, from the tolerances. I'm always tweaking with heel molds. Fashion cycles in terms of treasury management are very long. Service providers or software companies, and I've worked for both, they can get away with providing, try Shopify. I mean, 80% of that doesn't work, but nobody cares and nobody's very accountable. But if my shoes and heels don't work, even if a customer's a tiny bit dissatisfied because the delivery is 2 days late because FedEx couldn't get it together, I get a 1 out of 5-star review. So I'm held to these impossibly high standards. For example, on my website at the moment, Vario is not working. Vario hasn't been working for 3 entire weeks. And because of that, my sales are 1/4 what they normally are. And so, yeah, this is absolutely complex, what I do. And you're involved in so many different aspects of the business. I feel a bit like, those old-fashioned one-man orchestras because I do so many things. On the other hand, I've become, I'd say, moderately achieved in almost any given subject that you can throw at me. So to make this very clear, this company is really difficult. And if it were to be done again, I would just do something easy.
Okay. In terms of manufacturing this product, are you doing it within Europe or are you going to China, someplace like China? What I've heard from some of the other founders that are in footwear business or other similar kind of businesses, the approach that they take is, they will hire a designer, the designer will create the design, and then they would take the design to a factory in China who produce a similar kind of product, and the factory works with them. They will create prototypes. So it's almost like, they're doing a lot of the heavyweight lifting, and then they produce the products, and of course you probably get some sort of the cost savings of producing items in China. So I'm very
Yeah,
interested
no,
to
so
hear what your.
unfortunately, I'll answer that question. I can't do that for several reasons. The first is moral. I don't believe that Chinese people are less good than me. So I have nothing to say about China, and I have nothing to say about offshore production. And kudos to them for being so successful at what they do. And part of that is definitely related to price. However, I'm part of a European ecosystem, and I definitely want to be part of my community here in Europe, where I pay taxes and where we stand for certain values and for certain labor practices and for certain ethical practices related to leather and leather tanning. So those things are very important for me. That's number one. Number two, a Chinese produced shoe has certain characteristics which I would be anxious to avoid. So to get a Chinese factory to work to my quality criteria is possible if I'm a much bigger company than I am. So from the outset, those two reasons meant I didn't even look in China. And then in terms of designers, obviously I tried to do exactly what you described. So the first designer I worked with, I'd hired him on a freelance basis, and he was the shoe designer of Balenciaga at the time. And he couldn't do it because he didn't understand multiple height. He didn't understand the technology. And all of the shoes that he designed were either liquidated or destroyed. They were horrible. Yeah, so I design everything now. And then in terms of manufacturing, before COVID, I owned my own heel factory here in France, just so I could make sure quality was perfect.
Okay. I mean, to me, it seems like I'm really curious about you. It seems like you've done so many different things. How are you more? Do you consider yourself to be very entrepreneurial, or how have you been able to get so many ventures? And I think you were saying, you had like some different jobs and even teaching in prestigious universities.
Yeah, no, I'm very entrepreneurial. I'm very entrepreneurial. I don't know how to explain it. I have a lot of problems. For example, I'm not a very emotional person. I'm a very logical driven person. So that makes it difficult for me to be in the fashion space, which is, about emotion or about passion, or it's very difficult for me to think that way. At one point, I'd been recruited to be the director of Google here in Southern Europe. And so they give you a whole bunch of IQ tests, et cetera, et cetera. And the human resources person, or it was a headhunter. Sorry, I'm searching for words in English. She said, "We've never tested anyone so high on the rationality index. You're just out there all on your own." So yes, I'm very rational and I'm very entrepreneurial. I'm born in Canada. My mom is Indian. I live in France. And I think when you have such a diverse background, you are more entrepreneurial because you're constantly noticing that things are done differently. When I went to India as a child, I would spend hours watching the person who made sugarcane juice, who would come to my grandfather's house. And this guy had a modified bike, a blade, and a press. And for me, he made the most wonderful potion I'd ever drunk in my entire life. But I remember fixating on this notion of ingenuity when I was 5 or 6. And I was fascinated by how so many people were able to do brilliant things with very little. And I think that that's something I deeply respect.
Yeah, I think something has to be said about, when you're constrained on resources and you have very high competition. I think it brings out ingenuity in a way that I mean, I've grown up in India, so I'm definitely very, very aware of what you're talking about. Um, so a little bit about your,
Wait, could I just brag for 1 second? So
sure.
4 years ago, one of France's leading luxury firms was interested in possibly acquiring my company, or they were interested in my company. So they audited my shoes, and the director of their factory called me and said that it was the best combination of fashion and technology, including the Helmets Apple collaborations, that they'd ever seen in their lives. And he's like, how on earth did you do
Yeah.
this by yourself? And that for me, I might not be a successful entrepreneur, but I'm certainly a successful innovator or creator. That for me was just very flattering feedback.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, we know that a lot of disruptive innovation always, or for most part, comes from, someone who starts up from nothing really. And I think something has to be said about, the passion that someone brings in, the ideas and the execution that a single person or, a small group of people can do, which I think when it becomes a big company and departments and things like this, it's almost like people are executing on something but there's no heart there. And I think there's something about that, that passion and drive of making something great, that only either a single entrepreneur or a small group of people can do. um,
We're a
uh,
small group of people. And I think one of the things that for me, for example, I haven't had a salary in 13 years. My friends don't even ask me if I want to go skiing in the Alps anymore because they know I
okay.
can't afford it. But I see this company as my fourth child. And
Mm,
for me, it's very important to nurture it and to
mm,
bring it as far as I possibly can. And if this fourth child would die, say we
mm,
would go bankrupt, that would be truly heartbreaking for me. So I do my 80 hours of work per week. I've
mm,
invested every cent of my savings in this company. We do make money. I'll be honest with you. At the moment, we're only making 7% of what we
mm,
made in 2019. So we've
mm,
been deeply affected by COVID because professional women have by and large
mm.
not gone back to the office. So the
Yeah.
drivers, why would you buy my shoe? It's to wear in the office, it's for weddings,
Mm.
and it's for travel. And those things were deeply affected by COVID. So we're seeing a slight increase, and then you can just get annihilated by Shopify plus Verio. At any rate, it's just to say, I think you're right about the passion. And for me, I feel very strongly about what I do because I fundamentally believe that women do need a shoe that helps them reach the top and doesn't get in their way, either of their health, of their success, of their aesthetic, of anything. And this shoe, because we have 8 different heels in 8 different heights, it should enable them to be whoever they want to be.
Yeah, I mean that is it's definitely challenging how COVID has affected the whole world. Do you ever think like, can you take what your current capabilities are around shoes or something like this and pivot it in some way, maybe to a different product which has higher demand? Do you ever think about this, or
I
you're
could
like,
definitely be the director of innovation of virtually any company because so I've been approached by different companies to become their director of innovation. Not now, because now I'm starting to get old. But I was very surprised. And then, in that kind of conversation, I've asked, why are you interested in me? And they've said, it's clear, like it's crystal clear that you have a different way of seeing things and that you're always thinking about a different way of achieving something that's either the same or slightly different. So I'm just wired that way. But I also think I could go back to finance or I could go back to management consulting.
I mean, I was asking more like, so as you said, there's the demand of maybe high heeled shoes has gone down, but I'm sure there's like maybe sneakers are popular,
Oh,
right? So
I see what you mean.
can you
I'm not
can you
passionate
pivot
about,
to,
okay,
yeah.
I'm not passionate about shoes. I'm passionate about women. So I'm doing this really because I wanted to, to provide women with a problem that most of the high heel wearers out there face. So if this company was to end, I wouldn't seek to do anything in the shoe space. I would seek to probably get involved with energy and the environment. But I'm more interested in making the world a better place than in sneakers. And you know what? There's 300,000 brands out there, all doing a wonderful job on sneakers. I don't even wear them, and I have nothing to bring that market.
Okay. So right now in your business, how can you share a little bit about your marketing? How are you going about, even in this challenging environment, acquiring new customers or?
Yeah, no, so that's hard. We've never done any marketing. So
Okay.
there's zero marketing from the beginning of this company to now. But now, so what I'm doing at the moment is I'm trying to get Shopify applications to work, which means I've spent the past 4 months harassing support desks. We had Shopify payments, which came to France, and that rollout was for us a complete catastrophe. So we installed Shopify payments and not a single sale for 2 weeks. Like when I say a complete catastrophe, it was terrible. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the website to be stable. And I'm trying desperately to improve our mobile UX, because if I look at the data, about 80% of the people who are connecting to the website are connecting from their phones, and our mobile experience is not great. We have a difficulty in that most merchant applications are built for something which would be product, color, and size. And I offer product, color, size, and size range. I won't explain it, but the fact that I have one extra definition that the client needs to take into account has created a lot of headache for us to become digital. So I'm almost ashamed of our UX. And I always tell people, I beg you, if you want to buy a pair of shoes, pour yourself a wonderful cup of tea and take half an hour of your life, because that's how long it's going to take to get that first pair of shoes and the first 3 or 4 pairs of heels as I move forward. So when I'm convinced that our UX and our conversion funnel are okay, so I'm going for a conversion funnel of about 1%. I'm then going to start working timidly with Google Ads. I lied. I've just started working right now, so today, with an SEO team, because we have competitors in this space right now and they dominate SEO. So they don't dominate product, but they dominate marketing. And I'm, this stupid girl here alone in Paris. I have a better product, but my marketing is non-existent or to be improved.
Okay. How are you the only person in your business? Are you working?
No, I have somebody who does finance, and I have somebody who does development work almost full time, and another person doing development work part time. But so it's a very small team. And then we use some external professionals. But believe it or not, it's sort of, back to that story about that very first designer from Balenciaga. A lot of professionals quit because, as I said, what I do is very difficult, and sort of their normal bag of tricks doesn't work in my company. So it's not unusual. The last 3 designers that I've tried to hire, all 3 of them have quit.
Okay.
And that's crazy. We're talking just about design. So all of the design that you see on the website, etc., I did that myself. And
Okay.
I'm not sure if a 50 plus woman who doesn't have any design ability whatsoever. So I don't even just design the shoes. I have to design the website. I have to, I take the photos. It's really because if you ask a photographer to take the photos, he
Yeah.
wants to take a photo of the shoe with the heel on it. And that's just not the point. The point is that you show the shoe and you show the heel. But for some reason, the photographer's being, everything that photographer knows is that a shoe must look a certain way. And that's terrible for my company because then I just become one of the million brands that sells shoes. And I need to find a better way of projecting what makes us different and what makes us special.
Very interesting. I mean, when I look at your site and when I look at your social media, I think I don't really see any difference versus like a big brand, right? It's like everything is very polished and looks really high quality and
Okay,
things
you
like
have
this.
just made my day. I thank you. And if I'm ever in Toronto, I'll take you out for a drink. Like that's really a tremendous compliment coming from you. So
Yeah,
yeah, I do that all myself.
yeah. I mean,
Everything.
yeah, that's great. I mean, it looks really great. But I guess maybe
Okay,
maybe
and I'll
what?
go further than that. The legs, if you don't see a person, those are my legs.
Okay, all right, cool. Wow. So you're really driving it completely on your own
Well, I
for the
have to
most part.
because, as I said before, our sales are currently down to 7% of what
Hmm.
they were in 2019. So since 2000, I've let go of 11 people
Hmm.
and, just to keep the company afloat. So that
Okay.
means I'm now doing everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
In terms of your are you selling globally? Are you selling only in Europe?
So we're
Which
selling
market?
online and the site should be working online properly. Canada's my second market
Okay.
because the shop in Toronto, it was wonderful. We won the 2017 Canada Retail Challenge. For any ladies who might be listening who actually remember that store, it was in Yorkville. There were heel walls everywhere. It was an absolutely stunning boutique. So I still have a lot of very faithful clients. Our repurchase rate is 76%.
Okay. In terms of your fulfillment and shipping, do you warehouse everything in Paris? How do you ship it out to
No,
other
I
locations?
warehouse in a banlieue of Paris, sorry, in an outskirts of Paris, because
Okay.
if I was warehousing in Paris, I'd be spending
Yeah, yeah. I'm yeah,
so I
yeah,
can't even calculate it, but basically
yeah,
it would be too expensive. Yeah.
yeah. Cool, cool. And in terms of shipping, do you charge customers shipping costs, or are you is it built in the product cost itself?
It's
And
not built in, no, it's not built in the product cost because my product is, for a lot of people, my product's expensive. So obviously for me, no, because I know what's going into it. But I can understand, in the Toronto market, if you look at a pair of shoes coming from Camper, which is a Spanish brand made in Mallorca, those shoes are at least twice as expensive in Toronto as they are in Paris. My shoes in Toronto are less expensive than they are in Paris just because of tax.
hmm,
But because I ship everywhere in the world, for me to get a pair of shoes into Australia costs 90 euros. For me to get a pair of shoes into Canada costs 30 euros. So I charge Canadians 25 euros.
okay.
And for me to get a pair of shoes into a home in Paris costs 3 euros. So since the price difference is so huge, I prefer making it visible because it changes based on the geography.
So, I mean, it seems like a very challenging endeavor running this business. Are you hoping that this is kind of like a ramp, slowly you'll be able to figure out the, you know, the key to the puzzle, that,
Yes, yes.
marketing and everything, and it's going to take off. Is that really what you're planning for?
Yeah, I quite literally. So I'm inspired by Dyson. Dyson, it took him 12 years to sell his first vacuum cleaner, and he never gave up. So in that respect, I've sold probably 160,000 pairs of shoes, and I've probably sold 3 times more heels. So I have sold product, but I'm very marginal. However, I have such a strong repurchase rate. I have a good reputation. I have people who are very quiet, but who love the brand. And I think, there are quiet people out there. There are people who don't. I've never left a review. So why should I expect all of my clients to? I think I'm ahead of the game. So I mentioned before that I was ahead of the game in terms of sustainability. I think I'm also ahead of the game in terms of technology. I think I'm ahead of the game in terms of instant personalization. We were never funded. And, I have a private equity background, and I've raised hundreds of millions of euros for other companies. I find that astonishing, but I kind of get it. I was on the way back from Cannes one year, and I was asking a guy, it was an investor event, and I was like, why didn't you want to invest in my company? And he's like, look, I don't wear high heels. And he goes, your product might be wonderful, but it has no relevance to me whatsoever. So my dream is that there will be somebody, I don't think it'll be a fund, but there might be an angel investor who believes that it's worth giving us a try. And the other thing that's true is I might get it. I might one day get the marketing right.
Okay. Are you doing a lot of social media? Are you on TikTok? I mean, TikTok is, when I talk to a lot of e-commerce businesses these days, it's like TikTok is the place where you acquire a lot of customers. Are you trying out Instagram and TikTok? Because that seems like that's where, especially like this kind of a space, marketing to women, I think that may be a great marketing venue. Are you trying that?
So I want to try it. I'll be very clear with you. When TikTok first came out, I was just hoping it would go away because I was thinking, oh, yuck, another platform. And then when Donald Trump was going to cancel TikTok, that was probably his only policy initiative that really got me excited because I was thinking this big problem will go away. However, in reality, I have the most TikTokable shoe in the planet. You can actually take off. So, if somebody was willing to have a camera on them and click on heels, they would become a TikTok sensation. So I should become a TikTok sensation. So I just have to get my act together. So when I think that my UX and my applications are working well. So one of the things I want to do in September is try to try to identify a Paris-based TikTok wannabe and just unleash her with the shoes, but it really won't be me. So yes, I'm interested in TikTok. I have a tiny little presence where I'm ridiculous. And I think it's because somebody like me has no business on TikTok. We did a marketing survey, which was absolutely fascinating because in my marketing survey, I was able to look at France as a market and to look at international as a separate market. So over 70% of my international clients are on TikTok. And in France, it's only 2%.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, I think in France, TikTok is still seen as a kids network, whereas internationally, it's matured a lot.
Yeah. So in every entrepreneur's journey, there's always mistakes made, lessons learned, failures. Can you share maybe, one big mistake or failure maybe in the last year or so, that you think, you learned something out of that, and what can other entrepreneurs take away from your mistakes?
I don't know if this is applicable to other entrepreneurs. It might be applicable only in the fashion space. By nature, I'm used to managing larger teams. And I'm the kind of manager who I'm more of an enabler, and I tend to trust people to do things. What I found in my company is I have to micromanage a lot more than I would normally. And if I don't, we go very quickly into a huge mistake. So that's one. And then the other deeper mistake that I made is I didn't trust myself. So until very recently, I would trust the expert. So, for example, a foundation issue problem for me was the marketing experts who were around the company when I was considered the next big thing told me women were scared of technology and you could never talk about the innovation to a woman. And because they're coming from companies like L'Oréal or Louis Vuitton, I believed them. And in actual fact, L'Oréal's marketing has changed since. So now they do talk about the innovations that they put in their skin cream. And that kind of advice turned out to be intergalactically wrong for my company. And it created years and years of problem. But I think you touched on something that is true. I wait too long. I waited too long to get onto Instagram. I'm waiting too long to get onto TikTok. I waited too long to become digital. And I think it's because I'm profoundly none of those things. I'm not a digital person. If TikTok never existed, it wouldn't change my life at all. And Instagram, I'm not sure if I'd be on Instagram. So I guess it really goes into my absences as a person.
Now I'm going to move on to next segment of the interview called the rapid fire round. In this round, I'm going to ask you a few quick questions and you have to answer maybe 1 or 2 words. One book recommendation for entrepreneurs or business professionals.
Okay, so I would like to preface this rapid fire by saying that I lost all of my brain cells during COVID, and I can't read 1 page and remember what I read. So I would say my favorite book when I used to be a professor was Crossing the Chasm by Christensen, a Harvard professor.
Cool.
And that remains very relevant to me today.
An innovative product or idea in the current e-commerce, retail, or tech landscape that you feel excited about? Innovative product or idea.
Well, the last thing I just bought were these electric tennis rackets which kill mosquitoes and make a very satisfying buzzing sound as you kill them. So I found that that was innovative, fun, and useful.
Does Paris have a lot of mosquitoes or?
So many, you have no idea. So now everybody in the house has one of these tennis rackets. And when they come out for you, you just swat. And we've all gotten really good at our mosquito serve.
Okay. A business or productivity tool or software that you would recommend, or a productivity tip?
I don't use too many, and I'm not thrilled with the ones that I do use. In the larger application, I'll just give a good plug for Klaviyo, probably like everybody else. I love Klaviyo. Like it's AI for the little guy. It's so satisfying. Everything works. I love Klaviyo Logic. It's my favorite tool out there.
Cool. A startup or business in e-commerce, retail, or tech that you think is currently doing great things?
Can I pass on that?
Sure.
I draw a blank.
I mean, you did mention Klaviyo, which is an interesting business.
Okay, yeah, no, I deeply love Klaviyo.
A peer entrepreneur or a business person whom you look up to, or someone who inspires you?
I guess my mentor. So my mentor is the head of Repetto, and that's France's largest luxury shoe brand. And that person has sat up with me until late at night, poring over financials, trying to find a way out of problems. When we had the riots in Paris, he offered to send a team to build fortifications around my boutique so that it wouldn't get destroyed. Just a very helpful, nice person. He has never shared commercial contacts with me, and he refuses to do a collaboration shoe. So there's a limit to his niceness, but he has been helpful, and he taught me a lot about the shoe business.
Okay. Final question: best business advice you ever received, or you would give to other entrepreneurs?
Yeah, when I was on the board of directors of my university in Toronto, so it wasn't my university, it was my college. It wasn't called the board of directors, it was called the governing council. We had an individual who everybody wanted to get rid of. And I had the privilege of sitting beside Rogers of Rogers Cable and Television. So the person who'd founded it, because he was an alumnus of my college. And I asked him why everybody was so hypocritical and two-faced whenever this individual was in the room. And he told me that for as long as somebody's working for you, they're your person, and you have to nourish them and make sure they're as performant as possible. And you behave that way until you can get rid of them. So I guess what this is translated into for me is I don't undermine people ever. And if they're my people, they're the best people in the world. And I might have a difficult conversation with them, but I would never do anything bitchy, deceitful behind their back, because I believe very strongly that a business is made up of people, and it's better to have happy people, very fundamentally.
Cool. Those were all the questions that I had today, Tanya. Thank you so much for your time today, for sharing your story from Paris today, and some of the challenges and strategies and tactics that you've used to start and grow your business. So yeah, thank you so much. If somebody wants to purchase your shoes or get in touch with you, what is the best way they can do that?
Definitely online. And please do, that it would really help us out. We were never funded, but there's nothing better than selling a pair of shoes and heels. So it's www.tanyaheath.com.
That's awesome. Thank you, Tanya. Again, thank you so much for your time today. Really, really appreciate it, and wish you all the best in your business.
And thank you. I've enjoyed chatting, and the questions were fun.
Thank you.